Let me just start by saying that today's hearing is about the largest intellectual property theft in American history. For all of the talk about artificial intelligence and innovation and the future that comes out of Silicon Valley, here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. AI companies are training their models on stolen material, period. That is just the fact of the matter. And we're not talking about these companies simply scouring the internet for what's publicly available. We're talking about piracy. We're talking about theft. For years, AI companies have stolen massive amounts of copyrighted material from illegal online repositories. Now, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security regularly prosecute individuals who engage in exactly the same kind of behavior using platforms like LimeWire or Napster in the old days, using a process called torrenting. But have these big tech companies been prosecuted? No, of course not. They're getting off scot-free, and this hearing will show us that Meta and Anthropic and other AI companies are willfully using these illegal networks, these torrenting networks as they're called, to steal vast swaths of copyrighted materials. The amount of material that we're talking about is absolutely mind-boggling. We're talking about every book and every academic article ever written. Let me say that again. Every book and every article ever written. Billions of pages of copyrighted works, enough to fill 22 libraries the size of the Library of Congress. Think about that. 22 libraries of Congresses full of works. That is how much has been stolen, and this theft was not some innocent mistake. They knew exactly what they were doing. They pirated these materials willfully. As the idea of pirating copyrighted works percolated through Meta, to take one example, employee after employee warned management that what they were doing was illegal. One Meta employee told management that, and I quote now, "This is not trivial," and he shared an article asking, what is the probability of getting arrested for using torrents, illegal downloads, in the United States? Another Meta employee shared a different article saying that downloading from illegal repositories would open Meta up to legal ramifications. That's a nice way of saying that what they were doing was exactly, totally, 100% barred by copyright law. Did Meta management listen? No. They bulldozed straight ahead. We'll see evidence today that Mark Zuckerberg himself approved the decision to use these pirated materials. And then, the best part, Meta management tried to hide it. They tried to hide the fact that they were engaged in the illegal download of pirated works. And not just the illegal download, but the illegal distribution of these same works. They tried to hide it by using non-company servers. They went so far as to train their AI model. I get this. Meta trained its AI model to lie to users about what data it had been trained on. I mean, you talk about an Inception level worthy deception. Training the AI model to lie about what its own sources were. This isn't just aggressive business tactics, this is criminal conduct. And I just want to point out, Meta's conduct is not an exception. This is the rule when it comes to what is happening right now in the AI space among these mega companies. Big tech operates on the model of do whatever you want and count on the lobbyists and the lawyers to fix it later. They don't care about the rule of law. They don't care about America. They don't care about freedom. They certainly don't care about working people. They care about power and they care about money. And every time they say things like, we can't let China beat us, let me just translate that for you. Every time they say that, oh, we can't let China beat us, what they're really saying is, give us truckloads of cash and let us steal everything from you and make billions of dollars on it. That's the translation. And we're going to see that in the testimony and the evidence today. Here's the bottom line. We have got to do something to protect the people of this country. I'm all for innovation, but not at the price of illegality. I'm all for innovation, but not at the price of destroying the intellectual property of the average man and woman in this country. We have laws for a reason. Those laws ought to be enforced, and big tech should not be above the law. Enough is enough. It's time to enforce the law. And that's what this hearing today is about. Professor Viswanathan, let me just start with you, if I could, and let's see if we can just drill down on some of the specifics here. Mr. Baldacci mentioned in his opening statement that AI could just feed dictionaries into their platforms in order to train them. They don't do that. They prefer published works, fully formed works. Why is that? Can you give us an insight into that?
That's absolutely right. They learn syntax, structure. They learn how we learn language, right? When you learn language, you just don't learn words. You don't memorize words. You don't memorize notes when you learn music. You learn structure and syntax. And the point that Professor Lee is making is correct. They need large data sets. More is better to learn predictive language models. However, more is not everything. It's not pirated works.
So let me just ask this. You said that they are not buying the books. They're not buying Mr. Baldacci's book or anybody's book who's sitting up here, anybody in the audience. They're getting them. They're stealing them. They're pirating them from somewhere. Where they, if they're not buying the books, they're not stealing them out of libraries, where are they getting them?
These large repositories of materials that are available online, there are many. Some are licit, some are not licit. The pirate websites in particular are not licit. So if you need a lot of material, you go out and you scoop up all that material that you can find. But you don't go to pirate websites to get that material if what you want to do is legal. None of these works are licensed. None of these works are licensed. No author has been compensated to date.
So how do they go to these, let's call them shadow libraries, to get the works illegally? They've already, by the time they go to the shadow library, the works there are already stolen, right? They've already stolen Mr. Baldacci's book,
Correct.
Professor Lee's book, everybody's book, your books. They've stolen them. How do they actually, when they go to the shadow library, how do they get them? I mean, how does the AI company then take possession of the particular work? Like,
There's a process called torrenting, and I will not trouble you all with the details of torrenting, but essentially huge amounts of data stream to you and you get them. At the same time, you can send them out. That's called seeding. You can send them out at the same time. Uploading and downloading exist at the same time. This is a peer-to-peer process. So not only are you taking in these pirated materials, you are also distributing them. The violation of copyright law exists at the reproduction of these works, at the making available of them by the pirate libraries, the dissemination of them, and your dissemination, Gen AI company, of them as well.
So they're both taking the works and distributing them as well in this thing you call, kind of like Napster, this thing that you call torrenting. Let me ask you this. I mean, is torrenting legal? It's not legal, is it?
Torrenting can be legal, but in this case it is not. And in this particular case, this is benefiting the Now, I agree with Judge Alsup, who said, if you're taking it from pirate libraries, no way. That is not acceptable, right? Part of what we're seeing here, Judge Chabria said, well, it's not helping the pirate websites. Well, yes, it is. The pirate websites, there's one in particular called Anna's Archive. They actually put on their website, hey, Gen AI companies, come train on us. We'll do some data swaps, or you know what? You can make us a donation too. This is directly helping the pirate websites thrive, flourish, proliferate.
Let me ask you this. Have there been any, to your knowledge, any criminal enforcements against these torrenting platforms?
Yes, there have been attempts to. Again, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. You get one, you knock it down, it pops up again in some jurisdiction that you don't have control over.
What's the key to a criminal enforcement? You know, civil versus criminal in this context, when do we have a criminal case against torrenting? What's the key to that?
Okay, this is a really important point. What's criminal here? Criminal copyright liability has two prongs to it. Prong one is you have to do it willfully, and prong two is you have to do it for commercial advantage or gain. We clearly know that prong two is met. This is for commercial advantage or gain. I don't think Meta is doing this out of the goodness of its heart. Prong one, willful, means you need to know that what you are doing is illegal. There's lots and lots of evidence now, particularly from the Cadre v. Meta case, that shows that they knew this was illegal. They even had to ask all the way up the chain of command to Mark Zuckerberg and say, hey, is this okay? And he said, yes, it did. Yes, it's okay. So not only did he do it knowing it was illegal, he did it knowingly, he did it willfully, intentionally, and whether or not he knew what statute it was illegal doesn't matter. For this to be willful, you have to know that what you're doing is wrong, and this meets that prong. So this is, in fact, amounting to what you might call criminal copyright liability.
Mr. Pratt, let me just ask you about this, about the willful aspect. And let's talk about Meta in particular, since Professor Viswanathan just mentioned Meta. They're one of the biggest monopolists in the world, and one of the biggest AI companies now in the world, if not the biggest. So let's just talk about them for a second. Meta uses torrents to acquire pirated data for its Llama model. Is that right?
Correct.
how much data would you estimate that Meta has torrented? It's illegally downloaded and also then shared in this peer-to-peer scheme.
It has pirated well over 200 terabytes of copyrighted material from multiple, I don't call them shadow libraries because they're not libraries, but illicit criminal enterprises.
And how much has it paid the copyright holders for these works that it's used, to your knowledge?
Nothing.
If nothing, zero. So billions of works, billions of books like Mr. Baldacci's, zero payment. If Meta were to pay, do you have any idea what the cost might be? I mean, did they ever, to your knowledge, in your discovery, did they ever explore paying? I mean, is there any sense of how much this might have cost them?
Early on, they explored licensing. They assigned 2 individuals part-time to attempt to license, and they decided it would take too long, for example, and that's when they turned to piracy. At the time, they had public documents show that certainly tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, had been contemplated for licensing at that time.
Okay, so let's just think about this. Hundreds of millions of dollars, that's the value, maybe sort of the base, the bare value of the works that they've used, like the works that you all have written on this panel. Hundreds of millions, and they paid zero of that. So let's just drill down a little further. Did Meta know what they were doing was wrong? Do you, Mr. Pritt, believe in the evidence you've seen that there's any evidence to suggest that Meta's employees knew what they were doing is illegal?
I think the documents that have become public clearly show that.
Let's just look at a few of these documents. I'm going to show you a few things, and I'll ask you to help me interpret them to make sure that we get them right. Let's start here with a Meta employee, a Meta engineer working on their AI project, Eleonora Prasani. She says, I don't think we should use pirated material. This is in a chat with other Meta employees. I don't think we should use pirated material. I really need to draw a line there. She goes on, I feel that using pirated material should be beyond our ethical threshold. Sci-Hub, ResearchGate, LibGen are basically like Pirate Bay or something like that. They are distributing content that is protected by copyright, and they're infringing it. How do you read this, Mr. Pritt? Does this look like knowledge to you?
That's certainly what we've argued in the case.
Let's look at another Meta employee. Here is Nisha Deo in the same chat. She replies and said, it's the piracy and us knowing and being accomplices that's the issue. This is a Meta engineer working on their AI project. It's the piracy and us being knowing accomplices that's the issue. Let's look at another one. Here is the response that another Meta engineer in the same chat gave. Well, we want to buy books and be nice, open people here, but, however, to make it happen and not letting the bad guys win, that's the beat China argument, we need to make a case fast and cut some corners here and there. We need to cut some corners here and there. Mr. Pritt, what are we looking at here? I mean, is this knowledge of illegal activity?
When they refer to bad guys, I think they're actually referring to OpenAI and other AI competitors. But yes, this is certainly one of the many documents that show that they knew these were pirated websites that contained copyrighted materials, and they were taking them for free.
So here we have it in black and white. Don't believe me. Read the evidence. These are Meta's own engineers, Meta's own employees saying they know what they're doing is ethically wrong, illegal, likely to subject them to legal liability, and they're doing it anyway because they need the money. I just want to follow up on this line of questioning, Professor Lee. When you say that it would be to the benefit of the United States, isn't Mr. Baldacci a citizen of the United States?
Entirely. I'm not saying that Mr. Baldacci does not benefit from the copyright. There is an
but let's take a different author. Professor Viswanathan, she's a citizen of the United States.
Yes.
So I'm just struggling to understand when you say that it will benefit, that the mass theft of their works will benefit the United States ultimately, you're saying that the mass theft and potential impoverishment of American citizens ultimately redounds to the good of America?
Not at all, Senator.
I think you're being a little too imprecise, right? What you mean to say is it may benefit American corporations. It may impoverish American citizens, but it will benefit American corporations.
Well, Senator, there is a balance to be struck, and the courts.
Well, indeed, but it's you are waving the wand, the magic wand of that this will benefit the United States. So we're in an arms race with China. I'm just trying to drill down on your assertion. I think what you're really saying is that the enrichment of certain multinational corporations that are incidentally based in the United States, taking the works and personal property of American citizens, is a good thing. That's a little bit less clear to me.
Well, the way that I view the national interest, as stated by President Trump's executive order, is that there is a national priority in maintaining the United States' dominance and leadership globally in AI. And I would defer to the view of the AI czar, David Sachs, who said, if there is no pathway to fair use in AI training, we will lose the race with China.
Well, you think that we should allow an unelected AI czar to decide what the rights of American citizens are?
No, not at all. This is going through the courts. I would let the courts decide all of these disputes, and there are presently 44 lawsuits around the country. So this is not a time for Congress to intervene in terms of deciding these very difficult questions.
It just sounds strange to me to say that the United States as a nation is going to benefit from the mass violations of its citizens' rights. I thought what made us a nation was our common citizenship, the things that we agree on together, the rights that we hold in common. And your argument seems to be it's fine to violate those rights en masse if it redounds to the benefit of the nation. I think what you're really saying is to the benefit of certain people in the nation and their immediate interests. Let me ask you about something else you said, fair use.
Can I respond?
Well, just a second. I have limited time here. Fair use, you said, is a flexible doctrine. It's an equitable doctrine. And these companies aren't exactly coming to this with clean hands, are they? They're coming to claiming fair use after they've stolen Mr. Baldacci's work. They didn't take it from the library. They didn't license it. They didn't buy it. They went to a pirated illegal site and took it. And now they're coming and claiming the cover of equity. That seems kind of strange, doesn't it? Is that how equitable law works?
That is the very question, the initial acquisition, whether that was justified as fair use. And the two judges disagreed on how to treat that initial acquisition from the shadow libraries. So I think it would be incorrect for us to assume that it is necessarily a violation, and the Supreme Court in Google versus Oracle had an opportunity to discuss or require considerations of bad faith in the fair use analysis, and it rejected that opportunity and even cited Judge LaValle's very influential fair use article saying that fair use is not limited to the well-behaved.
Okay.
Now,
you're making these. We appreciate you being here, and you're making these arguments very gamely. That's helpful, I think, to have this debate. But I just want to point out that there's a lot of hand waving going on here. Every time we get down to the nub of the question, can these giant corporations take the copyrighted work of individual citizens? We get distracted with, well, it's for the good of the country. Maybe it's not so bad. We have an arms race on. There's an AI czar. I actually think I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's pretty simple. I think in America we have rights. Those rights are what protect us. These rights are being violated. And if we're going to succeed as a nation and uphold our principles as a nation, we better darn well enforce the individual rights on which the nation's founded. I mean, it's just a thought. Senator Welch, would you like to, am I catching you off guard?
I was kind of enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome to ask questions if you'd like.
Anyone, but especially a colleague senator and the chair of the committee, expression of righteous outrage and indignation with which I'm aligned. So thank you very much.
Mr. Pritt, if I could just ask you another question or two about some of the evidence. We talked about Meta engineers saying that they realized what they were doing was crossing an ethical line, that they felt they shouldn't be doing it, but they had to cut some corners. Let me just ask you, did Meta ever tried to hide what it was doing? Did it try to hide the fact that it was pirating these works?
What the document shows that in 2024, when Meta began to use Anna's archive, it decided intentionally to not use its own servers and instead to go through Amazon Web Services in order to ensure that the seeding, the sharing of pirated works would not be traced back to Meta's own IP.
It doesn't sound to me like a company and executives that think what they're doing is above board. It sounds like a company that thinks that what they're doing is probably illegal in some manner, but they want to go on doing it anyway. Let me just show you a couple of documents, help us understand what we're seeing here. These are more Meta engineers now, again, working on AI. We've got the first one, Nikolai, who says, not sure we can use Meta's IPs to load through torrents pirate content. Ha ha. I emphasize, these are their documents. I mean, for all of Professor Lee's, and again, I appreciate Professor Lee making these arguments, but for all of Professor Lee's comments that we're not sure if it's really pirated or not, they thought so. This is Meta. Meta thought so. The next person says, the next employee, I'm curious to start looking at some samples, but I feel like we should get some clarity on what's allowed and how, smiling emoji. Nikolai again, haha, yeah, I think torrenting from a corporate laptop doesn't feel right. I mean, what are we looking at here, Mr. Pritt? I mean, is this an attempt to be above board and forthcoming and, they think everything's fine?
I think that is a very difficult conclusion to draw from these documents. And with all due respect to Professor Lee, as I am still litigating the case against Meta on behalf of a group of authors, Judge Chabria in that case specifically declined to decide whether Meta's piracy, what it has engaged in terms of the downloading, the making available, the making additional copies and then sending those copies, over 40 terabytes of data to other individuals, is in fact fair use. And no court, including the Supreme Court, has ever held that rank piracy is somehow fair use. And instead, the Supreme Court case law, the still law of the land, says that fair use presupposes good faith and fair dealing. I will leave it to you whether or not you think any of these documents shows good faith and fair dealing.
Let's just look at one other document and ask ourselves if this looks like good faith and fair dealing. More Meta employees, more AI engineers. Frank, can you clarify why we can't use Facebook infra internal for this again? Frank Zhang replies, we've got to avoid the risk of tracing back the seeder from a Facebook server. And he clarifies, avoid the risk of tracing back the seeder download are from Facebook servers. So here we have Meta employees saying they know they're pirating, they think it's ethically wrong, they think it's illegal, and they are actively avoiding trying to create a paper trail. They're trying to hide it. I mean, that doesn't sound like fair use to me. Does it sound like fair use to you, Professor Lee? I mean, do you think this is fair use?
I would just say I agree with Judge Chabria's approach. The distribution claim is still live in the case, and this aspect of the torrenting may well be infringement and not fair use.
I'll just say this. If this isn't infringement, Congress needs to do something. I mean, if the answer is that the biggest corporation in the world worth trillions of dollars can come take an individual author's work like Mr. Baldacci, lie about it, hide it, profit off of it, and there's nothing our law does about that, we need to change the law. And if nothing else comes out of this hearing today, I hope that's it. And I hope that this is motivation to this body that we need to be paying attention to what's going on here. Mr. Baldacci, you said you'd rather live in a different planet if there was AI that could write your books. I'm sure that will never happen. They'll never write your books. I want to live on a different planet if this can go on and it's perfectly legal. We've got to do something about this. Let me just ask you, Mr. Pritt, finally, what about Mark Zuckerberg and all of this? I mean, do we think that Zuckerberg knew about this, approved this? I mean, what's the evidence suggest?
Certainly the documents that have become public in the case explain that the decision whether or not to use Library Genesis, which is a notorious illicit marketplace, for example, for actual training as opposed to exploration, was escalated to Mark Zuckerberg.
I think the judge said something to this effect. Let's just look here if we've got it. that in fact Zuckerberg was asked about it. There it is. In the spring of 2023, after failing to acquire licenses and following escalation up to Zuckerberg, Meta decided to just use the works acquired from a torrenting platform as training data. So they just did it anyway. Do it anyway. Forget it. Don't pay Mr. Baldacci. Don't pay anybody. It costs too much. A lot cheaper to take it for free and then make billions of dollars off of it. Listen, I'll just conclude with this. I want to thank all the witnesses for their testimony. And Senator Welch, if you have more questions, or Senator Durbin, I'm happy to let you ask those. For my part, I just want to say, I think that this is a moral issue as much as anything else. I think this is an issue about who we're going to be as a country. Are we going to be a country, as is written into our Constitution, where we protect the rights of our citizens? It's part of what makes us Americans. And we welcome the creative genius of people like Mr. Baldacci and the marvelous diversity of imagination and viewpoints and perspectives that has come to characterize our country. Are we going to protect that? Or are we going to allow a few mega corporations to vacuum it all up, digest it, and make billions of dollars in profits, maybe trillions, and pay nobody for it? That's not America. That's not our country. It never has been. Listen, I'm all for the free market. I'm glad Mark Zuckerberg can make his billions. That's fine. But not by running over people like Mr. Baldacci or anybody else, or any young author who's trying to get a start, or any other person, creative, non-creative, or just a working guy who puts something on Facebook. Why should all his stuff get taken? I just think that's wrong. I think it's morally wrong. I think, frankly, it's not consonant with our principles as Americans. And I think we can and should do better than that.